Oh hey, didn't see you there. The measure of a group isn't defined by its strengths, but by its weaknesses. And for weebs, there's nothing that gets them weaker than understanding people. Oh, hello? God!
Communication. In this world of constant information flow, how we relay that information is dependent on a number of things, like cadence, meaning, tone, and manner of speaking. It can be so effective, I could just reuse parts of my own scripts to get my point across. But way back then, humanity had the bright idea to split up into different groups to speak different communication methods. So much so that we couldn't understand each other at that point. We couldn't tell an from an achunka. Eventually, those would evolve into even more complex languages like English, Swedish, Sundanese, New Yorker, and French. Sorry for swearing. Translation methods weren't refined, so it was a miracle that we managed to dig up one of the most important artifacts in lingual history that allowed us to unlock not just Egyptian lore, but new ideas in translation techniques. I believe it was called the Duolingo. Nowadays, translation is far more common, or borderline hobby for some, and some people even make jobs out of it. So what happens when you have the know-how and tenacity of translations and mix it with the market demand to not utilize third-grade reading comprehension? Dubs. The art of applying a new voice to an existing medium is a fine art on its own. From old kung fu movies to video games of new, the world of voice acting is not short of professionals who make a living off of giving a different inflection, vocabulary, and attitude to characters not of the language spoken.
It's actually a really cool process. The fine-tuning and respect actors, editors, directors, writers, and engineers give the original works are admirable. In fact, I'm trying my hand in dubbing myself. So far, it's kind of neat.
But when it comes to anime dubs, there's a certain mark on the concept as a whole. You see, anime dubs seem to have a rather infamous place in the anime community. There's a slew of arguments for and against it that we'll talk about later, but the general idea is that the dubs of anime are widely inferior to the native Japanese takes. And it's not just English. There are accounts of dub discourse in Spanish, Greek, Finnish. To be fair though, there's probably 10 complaints for each dub job regardless of how good they are, so it's not like it's set in stone like the Duolingo.
I could also be entirely wrong on this, and if you heard a great dub in sign language, then it's probably good. But really, people just like complaining that it isn't in Japanese. I think we all know that. But oddly enough, the language I see the least complaints about is French. Sorry for swearing again.
So today we're talking about anime dubs, what makes them work, what makes them fail, and why they're important. But first, let's talk about why they exist.
By the way, from here on, we're strictly talking about English dubs because that's the language I'm speaking in right now.
Everybody got that?
The first dubbed anime so happened to be the first anime movie to be theatrically released in the West, 1961's Magic Boy. See this video for more information. Actually, there seems to be a little misconception that the movie doesn't have a dub, and that it was shown in theaters in only Japanese apparently. But I can assure you it does have English voice acting. Here, listen.
My name is Sasuke. Who are you?
Who am I? Don't tell me you don't know Gankuro. I am the meanest bandit in all Japan.
A real bandit? Why don't you go to work like everybody else?
Go to work?
I'm not sure where that misinformation comes from that the English version doesn't exist, but in the end I guess it doesn't matter. It's a small misconception anyway, probably because that's the amount of people who know this movie exists in the first place. As for the first anime series, there's actually a larger contention with that. In doing research for this episode, a lot of quote-unquote sources say that Tetsujin Niji Hatsuko, better known as Gigantor, was the first show to receive an English dub. However, that's actually not the case. The actual first one, to my knowledge, is the Mighty Atom, aka Astro Boy. In fact, Astro Boy precedes Gigantor's dub by nearly a year.
I just want to take a brief moment to highlight this article that tries to outline a brief history of dubbing. It claims, like other sources, that Gigantor was the first in 1964, right after stating that Astro Boys premiered in 1963. Sometimes the jokes just write themselves.
Well, regardless of which one was first, both saw moderate to great success and pioneered early interest in anime in the West. I mean, who could blame them? These are shows about a turbo robo boy and a giant mecha war machine. It'd be more surprising if they weren't successful during those times. And if you manage to see these dubs somehow, they are interesting to watch. They're fascinatingly endearing in how charming, simple, and awkward they are. It's clear the dubbing teams were just trying to get their footings in the process. What seemed like a marvel back then is a novelty now, but it's equally as cool. And that's partially why dubbing works today. While dubs most certainly aren't for everyone, there's still a multitude of benefits to their existence. The first being to offer a new perspective or a way to see the events through the unique characterization dub actors give their parts. It's like seeing the same play done by two different companies. How well the cast do are their own thing, and it's how the performances move you that gives the same play two different meanings. Bakuno's English dub is nearly perfect in recontextualizing the Americana themes of the story and mystery, but for the life of me, I can't find the same amount of intrigue in its original Japanese.
How's this, sir?
You sure it's legal to sell this stuff?
I feel festive in this.
This one doesn't quite suit my taste.
I don't know if this is good for robbing people.
こんなの勝手に売っていいのか？これも帽子なのかな？
ちょっと奇抜すぎるかな。
強盗するには向かないかもね。
It's not bad, but the English version is just done so well and so respectfully that it's a night and day comparison. In an extreme example, Ghost Story's infamous dub made the show go from a somewhat mediocre kid's ghost hunt to an incredibly raunchy adult black comedy. And for that one, yeah, there's not even a comparison. The dub is far more interesting is a word than the original.
And of course, it depends on the dubs themselves. Sometimes they don't change a thing, and other times they manage to turn the show into a new experience. And while it is all subjective, you can't deny the effort that is put into the productions, regardless of how well they turn out. That in itself is admirable.
Another pro to the dub scene is the localization, not just in legal terms, but in the fact that, well, it's more accessible. Believe it or not everyone wants to watch a full picture and constantly look down at the lower 10%.
Only about 1% of people do.
Years back, not every show got a dub, so those that didn't seem to have a more limited reach in countries not Japan. But now, just about every major and even minor production seems to have the old English deep throat. Not everyone, but the advent of anime's growing influence as well as major companies like Crunchyroll and growth in demand has certainly done the dub industry quite well. And that's the third point I want to bring up. The industry. Dubbing has seen the rise of the voice acting scene like nothing else. Talent finds a way, and there's a lot of talented actors out there giving their all to these individual roles. Matt Mercer, Laura Bailey, J. Michael Tatum, Brina Palencia, they and more really exude the vocal strengths that can be found in their performances unique to them.
It's gotten to a point where some of these actors are household names. You know, if that household's most common meal was katsudon with barbecue sauce, and the kids' names were Ichigo and Azunai Johnson. And I know what you're thinking. And yes, I also wish I was raised in a household like that.
I have an especially great appreciation for dub voice actors because of how much their roles personally affected my life, as many of the shows I watched when getting into anime were dubbed. A lot of them were great, but I find even those had something to them, be it certain actors' performances, surprising writing, and yes, even with how laughably bad they were.
But on that topic, there are things to critique about dubs too. The most notable is that when they're just not good. Yeah, that could be a problem. When it comes to the common criticisms of dubs, the most frequent complaint I often see is that they just suck. Now, opinions are subjective, and even though some people's opinions matter more than others, like mine for example, there is some credence to the idea some shows weren't given the right tools for their dubs.
A large part of the argument is that the shows just sound better in Japan, and I wouldn't necessarily disagree. Japan's voice acting industry is top-notch, one of the more revered in the world. They have whole schools dedicated to the art. All my school did was teach me math and science.
Like I'm ever gonna use this in the real world.
And for as much as I like bad dubs and small dosages, yeah, they can be pretty not good. I don't necessarily fault the actors. Sometimes they're just not given good material, or a line was translated weirdly, or there's a general disconnect between a Japanese understanding of the material against English colloquialisms. The dub of a certain magical index is fine enough, but the Japanese version, in my opinion, not only has better inflections, but the nuances and vibrato of the characters shine through it in comparison. And with that, there is the question whether every adaptation even needs a dub. I know I just went on about how cool and inclusive dubs are, but maybe we should take the incel approach and consider how uncool and exclusive they can be.
Hey, we're weebs. We're already a third of the way there.
Some shows get their point across just fine in just Japanese. You know, in the same vein how most movies are fine without Jeff Goldblum in them. Or how most presidential administrations are fine without Alexander Ramsey. Dog and Scissors' original Japanese is pretty okay on its own. Its dub is not only unnecessary, it's just plain obnoxious. But honestly, the existence of a dub is probably the least concerning sin the show committed.
The show is terrible. Like, the Japanese voice acting alone is good, but the story is just freaking awful. I don't even have a joke for this cutaway. This show just sucks. It really needs some Jeff Goldblum in it.
In a less depressing example, Nichijou.
Oh, the best sauce just kicked in.
The dub of Nichijou isn't all that bad. It has a good understanding of the jokes and relays them with moderate success. But there's no beating the original. That form of absurdist gag humor flourishes in the delivery, attitude, and timing the Japanese cast perfected. I mean, it's fine, but if it didn't exist, I don't think anyone would notice or care.
A big example people love to point to are the 4Kids dubs. They're pretty infamous for not just changing a lot of the material, including and aside from the dialogue, but the general edits and unnecessary additions that distract from the cowpuss's themes and writing. Personally, I find these dubs more fascinating than frustrating for how much they influence the current fandom landscape, and as well as the production techniques used for the different audience. But I can get why people would be turned off by how silly and weird they can devolve into. And that's saying a lot considering that anime by nature is already that. Don't glue clay to an intact mug.
But what I don't get is when people claim that dubs are inherently awful and they should never exist. It might be a loud minority, but the sentiment has been around for a long time. I swear, you can go on a blog about a recipe for chicken parmesan, and someone will still find a way to bitch about how the scarier dub somehow murdered their grandpa.
I mean, that's just ridiculous. Now if it was the Dog and Scissors dub, I would understand.
Subpurists really insist that you can't watch any anime in any other language other than the native Japanese, which makes it really awkward for shows like The God of High School or Radiant. Sorry for subjecting you to that image, I just needed to make a point. Again, this is really a minority of anime fans. Most of the fandom probably don't care how you watch your shows. But just to establish, yes, dubs are important. For as insignificant as this debate is, which helps that I'm an expert in unimportant arguments, the history and cultural substance dubs have all over the world can't be understated. I think we take for granted how much of an asset dubs are in anime. While they certainly can be the punchline to a lot of jokes in the anime community, the expansion and reach dub shows manage to hook onto, allowing for more people to be interested in the medium, isn't something to laugh at. A monkey with clown pants, now that's something to laugh at. But aside from the demographical scope, rich history, growing industry, and artistic integrity in translation with varied emotional and thematic prose, there's no other point to be made, right? Well, there is one other big bullet to bite into. Choice.
For as simple as the idea is, having a choice between subtitles and voiceover dubs has its benefits. Namely, you get to pick your poison. Yeah, if you don't like one or have a preference, it's an easy choice to make. If you didn't have a choice, you might be less inclined to watch it. Now, obviously, it's not black and white like that. There are cases where you just don't care, or there are legal issues with where you are, so there's that. But if your eyes are bleeding, would you rather be forced to watch Dog and Scissors with or without your ears bleeding too? That show is just so fucking bad!
But regardless of your feelings towards crimes against your sensibilities, dubs are here to stay, important or not. Yes, we'll still get works that feel like cash grabs, but we'll also continually get shows that feel like new masterpieces. Shows that not only translated the words to perfection, but the emotions and philosophies that come with them. As the anime sphere expands, we'll see more people jump into it with varied interest with the work of voice acting found in the subsequent growth of the dubbing world. It could spur new talent, criticisms, admiration, and spite for new and even old anime fans. As someone who loves voice acting personally, I wholeheartedly welcome it. An industry can grow without faults and falters, and while it's far from perfect, dubs still stand. They build on the good and the bad and produce some of anime's finest works, not by entirely uprooting the Japanese attributes of these shows, but by embracing the cultural linguistics of the localization teams and the personal heart of the actors who love the work as much as the works themselves. For better or what must not be named, dubs are essential. They open a new world to an existing one in numerous facets, be it with an acting industry, new artistic endeavors, or with anime as a whole. Dubs will stay as important to the zeitgeist as much as art itself.
And that's a general rundown of anime dubs. Whether or not you subscribe to whatever notion of dubs there are out there, we're lucky to be in the type of not just one, but two growing businesses, anime itself and dubbing. For however controversial dubs can get, I'd rather have them than not. But now, if you'll excuse me, I should get my voice back. Oh, there we go. Well, now I don't have anything to do. Well, it is October, so I guess I should do something scary.